my name is Tom Lyons. I'm a senior engineer with Inflow Communications. Welcome to our webinar today on Enterprise Contact Center Fundamentals for Administrators. Today, the topic will be the absolute basics of setting up the ECC system and how to follow your established call flow. So it's more meant for getting your feet wet in the contact center system. We will have some follow-up webinars on some of the more advanced features and how to set up things such as announcements and skill-based routing. This is going to be to show you how to get through the system, know what you're looking at, see how the call flow works from the main system to contact center, and also so that you're acquainted with the various pieces of the contact center, such as the services and groups and the IRENDs and IVR ports. Again, my name is Tom Lyons. I'm a senior engineer with Inflow Communications. I've been here for over 5 years, going on 6 in January, and have a wealth of experience both on the contact center and on the director side of the Mitel system, as well as Pure Cloud Genesis and Ring Central. A little bit about Inflow Communications before we get started here today. Inflow Communications has a sole focus on unified communications and contact center solutions. What that means is voice is what we do. We don't branch out into other technologies. We are all very well versed in voice. Voice is what we focus on, and anybody you get on the engineering side here is going to be able to assist you with your product. We are a Mitel Platinum partner, as well as partnered with Ring Central and Genesis Pure Cloud. And currently we have offices and employees in 10 states and currently support 200,000 endpoints and over 800 customers nationwide, and in many cases, indeed worldwide. And we are maniacal about the customer experience. We want to make sure we get you all the information that you could ever require and then some, make sure that your system is running as well as it can, and gives you all of the benefits that you require and is working exactly the way your organization needs. Here's a little snippet of some of the customers that we support. And as always, if you find the questions box in your GoToWebinar application, you can use that to ask questions as we go along. And at the end, I will answer those questions to the best of my ability. And if it's something that we do have to get back to you on, we can send you an email as well. So keep that in mind. Oh, looks like one of my... I apologize for the title. Apparently the title didn't go through, but this was supposed to say the basics of ECC. And so we're going to go ahead and get this started here. This is the basics of the contact center environment and what you're going to be looking at. So a general overview of what's in play. And you'll see here I have a couple different bullet points. I have an ECC server, the PBX server, which is your director, your IRNs and IVRs, and also your services and groups. Those are going to be the primary components that handle your call flow and transition between the director platform or the base platform and the contact center platform or the ECC server. So the ECC server itself is going to be the main piece that handles the calls when it comes into the contact center. So this is the software, just like Director on the main platform side, that handles all the configuration for that call routing, allows you to set up your announcements, and is responsible for that routing and also call presentation. The PBX server, which is the main server that most of you are probably very well acquainted with here, or the director server, is responsible for taking the initial call. So that server in question will actually take the call before passing it on to the ECC server. You also have IRNs and IVRs. These are specific ports within the contact center system that we're going to get into some specifics on here in just a minute. They handle specific services and provide customer experience while on hold. So this is what handles your announcements that come through to your customers, how they get presented, so what groups they go to in the system and which agents are able to take the call, and also provides things like your music on hold and options when your customers are on hold, so they can do things like request a callback or go to voicemail. So you do have those options there. And then finally, service and groups. They handle the specifics for individual queues. So this is where you actually would configure those options. To go a little bit over the basics of the contact center server. The contact center server itself is a dedicated server specific for call center operation. This is going to be a separate server from your HQ server that is going to actually handle the configuration that's required. There is redundancy available for this option. So if you are looking at trying to set up a redundant contact center environment with as small amount of downtime as possible, this is something that is actually possible right out of the box with contact center, provided you do have the redundancy licensing. You can set up 2 servers that work on a heartbeat with one another and will provide the same functionality even if the primary server goes down. It does require distributed voicemail server software, or DVS software. So it runs on its own server that talks to the HQ server using that DVS software, and then the contact center server runs on top of that so that you are able to do the configuration and routing that you're looking for. And there's a couple of things that need to be done in order for that server to function properly. In particular, as you can see in my 4th bullet point, voicemail boxes must be disabled for this server. That's because this is a special media server that requires the resources used for voicemail functions to be used for other applications in the contact center environment. And so as a result, voicemail is not supported on the same server that the contact center server software is on. And finally, it has its own director, which I will be showing you at the end here as we go through an example flow of what we're going to talk about here. So you will see both the director side and the contact center director side. So you can, as we follow the flow, and see how calls are getting into the system. IRNs and IVR ports are the basics of how we get the calls from the director on the HQ server into the contact center software and start that initial process for call routing. We're going to start with IRNs here. IRNs are a route point that you will set up on the contact center server as its managing server that actually handle the incoming calls from the HQ server and send them over to the contact center server. So you can think of the IRN essentially as the gateway between the two. Without this piece, the call would never get presented to the contact center server. So this is the first step that must be in place. It can be assigned a DID number directly on that route point, or you can put the route point on an auto attendant so that you can transfer into it from a main menu, which is what many customers do. In order to get that set up, you would set up a route point with a specific extension, so an extension that you specify. And then you would also notate that same extension as an IRN on the contact center side, which we will get into as we do the flow example. And this particular application, the IRN, handles the call routing to specific services and groups. So it actually will provide the destination on the contact center side, as well as allow you to do certain things like manipulate skill-based routing, which would be a topic for another webinar. In conjunction with the IRN, you also have IVRs. IVRs are how the system handles the customer interaction and experience. So this is where essentially your customers, while they're on hold, are going to hang out while they wait for an agent, and the IVR port is going to provide them with options like your branded announcements, and if you have anything like giving them an option to transfer to voicemail, or going to another queue, or even requesting a callback, it's all done through the IVR while they're on hold. Just like the IRN, it uses a route point on the ECC server, so it'll be a route point that you build in the regular director that is managed by the contact center server. It does not handle calls directly, so you don't put a number on this and you don't transfer directly into an IVR. Instead, you transfer to an IRN, which will then automatically use that IVR port as it's available to place callers into a holding state so that they can get to the next available agent. And just like the IRN, you need to make sure that matches, that the extension of the route point you build for this matches on the HQ server director as well as contact center director, which we will show as well. And the primary function of the IVR port is to deliver announcements to waiting customers and transfer to available agents as they become available to take your calls. So it is essentially, it's the transportation function of the system that allows the calls to be connected to your agents. They do each require a little bit of separate setup, although they are fairly similar, which you'll see on this slide here. The first one, and this is very important for continued operation of the system, make sure the route points are managed by the ECC server. If you have set up route points before, you'll know what I'm talking about. You can change the managing server for a route point to put it on a specific server. If it is not on the contact center server, the call will never actually go to the contact center, so the call will actually fail. So you need to make sure that both IRN and IVR ports are set up to be managed by the contact center server. The other piece here is that call stack depth is very important, but it's important in different ways for these two options. For an IVR, you want to make sure that the call stack depth is set to 1 for each IVR port that you have in place. The reason for this is if you have this set to a total higher than 1, it will actually allow the IVR to handle more than one person at the same time. And the result will be that you will have customers that will call in, be placed into hold, and can suddenly hear each other. This is rare, but can happen. Obviously, that is not what you were trying to do with your contact center environment. So you want to make sure that this call stack depth is set to 1. For an IRN, which actually handles incoming calls, you want to make sure that this call stack depth is set to much higher than 1. This is because of the way that calls are routed through the system. If you get multiple calls coming in at once, if you're very busy, then if this call stack depth is set to a low number, then you could potentially have people be sent to the busy destination because the route point doesn't think it can handle calls at the time that they come in. We recommend 30 plus. Ideally, if you can, I would set that as high as 200, just to make sure you're not going to run into any issues. That's just to make sure that your calls are going to be able to flow the way that you want them to flow. Another point here that I touched on the other slide here is you need to have matching numbers for both director and ECC for those route points. Then those calls won't actually route. And as a result, you'll also get the same error message saying that the call can't be completed, and it will disconnect you because the system won't know where to send those calls. So you got to make sure that those are set up correctly. And then finally, you want to disable the voicemail box on the route points themselves. Reason for that is if you do have that on, there is a potential that calls could be sent to the voicemail of the route point before they actually transfer to the contact center server. Obviously, this is not something that you want to have happen for your call center environment. So best practice is to turn off the voicemail box on the route point itself. Little quick tidbits on IRN setup and what you can do, which we'll go through in the walkthrough here in just a couple minutes. The IRN is where you will set your destination, so your service or script for your callers. And what this tells the system is when it receives a call on that number, that destination is where the call gets sent. There's also an option for DNIS, which is super helpful for your agents internally. The DNIS option, which you can set to whatever you want, will be the field that your agents will see when somebody calls in addition to the calling number that comes into the system. This is how your agents can identify what queue these calls are coming in on. So it's definitely a good field to utilize. And you can also set skills for agent usage. This is for skills-based routing. This is more of an advanced feature in the system, and we will be covering that in a later webinar. Once you get in through an IRN, the main piece is a service. And the service is going to be your main configuration piece for the majority of the call. The service is going to allow you to set up the actual call to get specific announcements, when those announcements happen, the group you're going to send calls to, which is going to be your group of users, any interflow or overflow or no agent destinations. So specific circumstances, like if the call is waiting for a certain period of time, what you want to do with it, or if there's no agents logged into the queue. And also can be used to select the agent criteria for routing. So how the agents in the group that get round will actually be presented to the call. So these are all things that you can do at the service level. The service will typically go to a group. We are going to focus on groups today. Scripting is another option, and will be covered in an advanced webinar later, because there is a lot to go over with that. But the groups are very simplistic. They select the agents that are able to take specific calls. They are sent calls by services, so that is how the group, in fact, gets a call. And in the group category, you can modify metrics for call analysis or call reporting. So if you have supervisors that are watching your call queues and looking for specific metrics during the day, you can actually modify the metrics here, so you can set thresholds for what's acceptable, what's starting to get iffy, and what will require attention. And finally, you have agents. The agents are the users of the contact center system. In the agent page, which I will show you here, you can set up your selection criteria for groups. And you'll see I have a sub bullet here that says beware group list order. There's a real good reason for that, which we're about to get into, but it will actually change how your agents are able to handle calls in a way that typically is not good for a call center environment. And so we're going to go over that here in just a moment. From the Agents tab, you can even assign a group for your particular agent, so you can assign them to multiple groups as you build them. And that leads us to our last bullet, which is that agents can be in multiple groups. So if you want to set up an agent that's going to handle 5 separate queues, you can absolutely do so. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to bring up a system here, and we're going to go through a quick example flow so that we can look at how the system would handle a call together. So give me 1 second, I'll pull it over here. And here we are. So on my screen now, you would see you have a web page with 2 tabs open. My first tab is the regular Connect director. We are focusing on Mitel Connect today. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Apparently my remote desktop does not want to allow me to zoom that in. I apologize. So hopefully this is okay to see. On the other tab, I have the contact center director open, which is a separate login for the server that the contact center software is hosted on. And so what we're going to do is we are going to go through and look at a specific IRN here. We're going to find it in contact center director in Connect director, and then follow it through to see how the flow would work in this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to look at this one in particular. This 82102502, which you can see is the number under IRN. And you'll see in that first pane up at the top here, you'll see that it has a default destination of a service CSCAN boss gear. So I can see at a glance where this is going to go if this number 82102502 is reached by the contact center director. In this particular case, just looking at this, I can already see that this customer uses 8-digit extensions. So on this IRN, I have that number. The first step to make sure that a call can be processed through to this number is to go to my Connect director, which is in my other page. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on the wrench. I'm going to click on features, and I'm going to click on call control, and finally on route points. And what I'm going to do now, once we're in here, is I'm going to find that number. So just to verify again, 82102502. And when I type in that extension, you'll see that I see a route point here. Going through the setup here, you'll see that the majority of the best practices is set here. There is a couple things that I would change, although we're not going to worry about that right now. But just to point it out here, that extension matches the extension on the ECC side. So the contact center server will know about that number when it comes through. I can see that the server is set to the ECC server. I know that because I know the naming of the server in this particular case. And also, I see that there is no mailbox enabled on the route point. So this is exactly how we would want to see this setting. Now, if there was a direct number on this, we would see it in the DID settings, and we could verify that that was the number that was going to come in. This one is likely off an auto attendant. We're not going to chase that today. As long as the call reaches this route point, it will transfer to the ECC side. So we know that this part is set up correctly. On the contact center side, if I go to that particular number here, I can see a lot about that particular call. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the destination here. And when I click on destination, you'll see that the type is set to service, and the service is set to the CSCAM boss gear. So that's going to be where the particular call goes if a call reaches that extension and gets transferred into the contact center. If I wanted to go directly to this service, I could actually click on this little door icon that's right here, and it would bring me right to the door. I want to check a couple other things though real quick, specifically the DNIS that we talked about. So I'm going to click on this here, this DNIS tab, and see what's set up here. And you'll see that they also have CSCAM boss gear in this particular DNIS name as well, which is our best practice for setting these up, because what will happen is when an agent is presented a call from this IRN, once it gets all the way through, he's going to see this here. And so he's going to know where the call originated from. So it's just good information for your agent to have before he starts the call, because he can already start framing the call in his mind. So now we know that it's going to the CSCAM boss gear, but we don't know anything else. So what we're going to do is I am going to click on this door here. And it's going to bring me directly to the service that is being used for this. And what we can see here is a number of different things. The general tab is going to give you a lot of different information, such as the name of the actual service. If you have a call profile list or anything set up, which is another way to do advanced scripting and routing within the system. Your agent selection criteria, which we can see off of here, they are actually using skills-based routing, which is set for best skill fit. That's using a series of numbers that you assign to each agent to essentially prefer routing to specific agents over others. The most common option is longest idle. So that would be the person that has been off calls for the longest would be presented the call first of the groups that the call gets sent to. Your other options there are terminal, which would be top down in the group list for each agent and would actually stop after it reaches the last agent for a particular group, or circular, which is going to work the same way, but then go back up to the top once the last person has been checked for a call. You'll actually also see there's a secondary criteria under best skill fit. So it actually checks for the best skill fit, and then if there's multiple people with the same skill level, it then still picks off the longest idle. So the longest idle is typically used a lot. There are a number of other tabs here that you can look at options for. Just to show you, the announcements tab would allow you to set up specific scripts for announcements, and you can set up if these are going to happen before a call is ever presented to an agent, or at periodic times while people are on hold. So as an example, under the secondary announcements, I can tell you this box is enabled and there is one script here. My guess is this is going to be specific branding for this customer, and it's going to happen every 30 seconds while they are on hold until they get to an agent. In the meantime, in between those announcements, they would get hold music. Destination is going to tell you where calls go. So in this particular case, we can see that it's going to the CSCAM boss gear group, which is, again, that's best practice. If you can name your services and groups similar so that it's easy to find in your flow, more power to you. I would definitely recommend that, because it's going to make your life and also our lives a lot easier if you do require any assistance, as well as just modifying any flow. It's just way easier to find things. And then we have a couple other options here, the overflow, interflow, and no agent destinations. I'm going to show you these real quick. Many customers don't use all of these, but some use some of them. In fact, this particular queue does use overflow. Overflow is a great way to make sure if your queues get overwhelmed, you can set it up so that other groups can actually start helping out. So in this particular case, I can see under overflow groups, there's a timeout of 30 seconds. And then if you look under that, we have two panes that says available and has a bunch of groups under it. And to the right, there's one group under it, and it says selected. So what this means is after 30 seconds, that group in the selected category is actually going to be added to the pool of callers that are, or pool of agents that are available for callers. So if somebody calls this particular IRN, gets through to the service, and is on hold for 30 seconds without an agent being able to actually answer the call for them, that second group's agents will be added to the pool so that if they are available, they can answer the call. Interflow works very, very similar. except instead of adding groups to a particular call, it takes the call and sends it to a different destination. In a lot of cases, this is used as a way to send people to voicemail if it's been too long. So as an example, if you were on hold for 5 minutes, you might go somewhere. And in this case, that's actually what they do. And in this case, they're using a script. Usually, you'll see this set to device for something like this. Device is just an extension in your system. So if you wanted to send that to a mailbox with an extension of 4,000, for example, after 5 minutes, or in this case, you can see 300 seconds, because it is done in seconds, you could set this destination to a device, and then you could set the device number, which would become available to change if I do this. You could set that to 4,000, and then it would send the call to extension 4,000 after 300 seconds. At that point, the group can no longer pick up the call. It actually exists elsewhere. I'm going to go ahead and reset that so that doesn't save. And then finally, we have a no agent destination. And this is usually set the same way as Interflow, or to a generic auto attendant or an operator group. It works much the same way. But what this is for is this is a catch-all destination. So if you have a call that does not, that gets to the service and there's no agents in the group that is specified, no agents logged in, it will automatically go to the secondary location. So this is good for times where you have issues. Maybe agents can't log in because of a network issue or something else going on. Maybe the server's having a problem and they can't log in. It is just a good thing to have for that particular case. The default for this, if you don't specify anything, is an error message and to hang up. So best practice is always to get this set up in your system. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to destination now, because now that I know that this service is going to be what gets hit when that route point extension is called, I'm going to click on the door to look at this group and see how it's set up. And so I can see here that the CSCAM boss gear group up at the top has 5 agents in group. It has a target average speed of answer of 30 seconds. So they want people to be picked up out of the queue within 30 seconds. They also have a specified maximum ACD talk time, which isn't an absolute maximum. It's just a suggested maximum for metrics of 900 seconds. A short call threshold, so a threshold that they do not actually count metrics against, of 5 seconds. So if you pick up a call or somebody calls in and they are on the phone for less than 5 seconds, it will actually discredit the call. And then we also have a 30-minute interval time to look at those metrics. So you can see all of this at the group. And from the group, you can take a look at the name. You can see what their capabilities are. These are all things that we would cover in later webinars because they pertain to things like ECC chat, outbound campaign dial lists, and also outbound callbacks. And you can also take a look at their general statistics here for the groups. The agents tab is going to let you choose which agents are a part of the group. So I can see that these 5 people that are on the right side are a part of the CSCAM boss gear group. So they would be the people that are taking calls. On the left side are everybody that is available in the system. So if I wanted to add more people, I could click on somebody, I could move them over using the right arrow. I could search for a particular name if I wanted to in this box, and pull people up. And just to show you here, for your metrics, if you're using contact center reporting, and this is all preference to see what you would use for your agent dashboard for your supervisors, so it greatly depends on your organization. But thresholds are going to allow you to set up specific targets for specific metrics so that you can set those up in your agent dashboard, and once those metrics are either exceeded or getting near to where you need to be cognizant of what's going on, they will change colors in the agent dashboard. So for example, we have an ACD ring state of 20 seconds. At less than or equal to 30 seconds, it's going to show between 20 and 30. It's going to show yellow, meaning that it's showing warning. If you get to 30 seconds of people ringing, it's going to turn red so that your supervisor knows, okay, this guy's been ringing for 30 seconds, so he's being presented to agents, but nobody's picking up, so what might be going on? So these are all things that you can use to make your reporting a little bit better. And finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one of these agents to show you how they can be set up here. So I'm gonna find Jody O'Hare, which is going to be in the agents option here. She won't be at the top. So what I'm gonna do is once I click on agents, I'm gonna click under search records, and I'm gonna look for Jody, and I can see Jody O'Hare right here. And I can see her agent name, her agent username. This matches the client username in Director, her agent ID and extension, any profile settings that she requires. These are for things like agent queues and email, which again are more advanced features in Contact Center that we're not going to get into today. And then the main things that we want to look at are her queue handling and her groups. And in queue handling, you'll see there's a group selection, which she's currently set to all groups. So she looks at all of her groups when she gets presented a call. And she also uses that best skill fit routing with the secondary rule of priority, which is how long a call is waited in queue. It is similar to longest wait time, but looks at priority because you can actually modify that at the IRN level to give yourselves an express queue, for example. So calls coming into certain queues might start with a higher priority. These guys use that, so that's why they use priority. Typically, you'll see that set to longest wait time, so whatever calls are waiting the longest. Now, all groups is important here because group list order is going to work like a top-down function in the groups. And so let me show you what I'm talking about here before we wrap up. I'm going to click on the groups tab here. And you'll see that Jody is a member of 3 groups, CSCAN Boss Gear, CSCAN TBW, and her own agent queue. When she's set to all groups, what that means is if there are calls waiting in all 3 of these groups, she's going to look at all the groups and then process the call that she's supposed to receive based on the longest wait time or the priority of all 3 of those groups. They are handled equally. If she would set to a group list order, that completely skews all of that longest wait time because the system will actually look at the top group first, then the second group, and then the third group. And what that can mean is there can be a call waiting in CSCAN TBW for 15 minutes and another call waiting in CSCAN Boss Gear for 14 seconds. And even though Jody would be set to handle the call based on the priority, which would be much higher in TBW at that point because of how long they've been waiting, it'll never get that far because the system will see her set up as group list order. We'll see the call waiting for 14 seconds in Boss Gear and present her that call instead. So if you are going to have agents that are going to handle multiple groups, then you definitely want to have them set to all groups. That will provide the best experience both for your agents and your users. And so that is what we have for you today. This was meant to get your feet wet with the Contact Center, have a general understanding of what you're looking at with your flows, what does what. There is definitely a lot more that goes into Contact Center that we will cover in later topics, such as how to actually set up specific scripts, potentially how to set up callback information, and skill-based routing. But this is just meant to make sure that you know what you're looking at so you can identify general flow issues. With that in mind, if there are any questions that I can answer at this time, go ahead and use that question box that you found in your GoToAssist application. I'll take a look here and see if anything comes in. Currently, we have none, so I'll wait for just a minute here. What do IRN and IVR stand for? It's an excellent question. I'm not actually sure that is completely documented by Mitel or ShoreTel in any of their guides. I have actually not heard the specifics on that, but I can try and find out for you, absolutely. Any other questions? When an overflow queue is used, how will this affect the Contact Center reports for live answer? So in your Contact Center reports, the system does a good job of showing if it was answered by a source other than the primary group. So you will actually see that a different group picked up the call in your report itself. I would also recommend, if you don't use it already, to leverage the Bright Metrics tool that comes with the Inflow support packages, because they will do a good job of letting you understand what's happening with those calls as well. Any other questions? All right, and it looks like we're about 10 minutes over, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure you guys know how to get in touch with us if needed. We have a few different ways to get in touch with Inflow. For our current customer resources, you can always send us an email at support@inflowcommunications.com. We also have a support portal at support.inflowcommunications.com, where you can actually log in, take a look at all of your existing tickets, or if you're an overall administrator for your company, all the existing tickets in the system for your company with us. You can update your tickets, look at responses, and see where things are at, all at a glance from there. You can also give us a call at 855-946-3569 or 855-9-INFLOW. We do have a 3-ring answer policy, so you will not be on hold for 10 minutes waiting for somebody to get in touch to pick up the phone and handle your call. And anybody that you get will be able to assist you with your voice needs. If you need any more information on Inflow support packages, you can send us an email at sales@inflowcommunications.com, or you can also call us on the phone at 844-446-3569. And again, on behalf of Inflow, my name is Tom Lyons. Thank you very much for joining us for our webinar today. We sincerely hope that we see you for our webinars in the future, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.